All right, well, here's where things get really interesting. As I mentioned previously, I'm interested in trying to create a directional shadow. Well, in order to do that, we obviously need to separate the shadow on its own layer as we've done. And then next, we'll go back to Free Transform. So navigate to the Edit pull-down menu. Here we'll go ahead and select Free Transform, or we'll press Command or Control T. Now what's interesting about Free Transform is we all know that we can simply click and drag on these points in order to change the way something looks. Well, what we also can do is hold down a modifier key to change the perspective of something. And I'm going to reposition this a little bit over here perhaps so that we can see this, maybe right there. Well, if I hold down Command or Control, Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, and I click and drag on these corner points, we can see that what I can do here essentially is kind of flatten out this shadow almost as if it's falling off in a particular direction. Let me put it over here so that we can see that a bit more. So again, here you can see it's almost as if there's a flat structure there, and that this shadow is then falling off towards that left corner there. It's not directly behind the leaf, but rather kind of falling off at one side. All right, well, I'll use my arrow keys, reposition that. And the trick with this, of course, is just hold down Command or Control and click and drag these points. Experiment a little bit. See what one point does. See how that could help your shadow out, going one way or perhaps another. So far, so good. We've modified the shadow in a pretty unique way. Let's press Enter or Return. Next thing that I want to do is just diffuse the shadow a bit. It's a little bit too harsh. In order to do that, we'll go to Filter. We'll choose Blur and then Gaussian Blur. Here I'm just going to add just a touch of Gaussian blur, just diffusing that a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. Use my arrow keys, just nudge this around, get it exactly where I want it. Okay, well, I notice a couple of little issues with the shadow. One is the shadow is the exact same tone throughout, and that's not how shadows work. They're typically darker, then they become a little bit more bright as it trails off. And so I want to add that effect here. So to do that, simply click on the Add Layer Mask icon. Next, we'll grab our brush tool. We'll paint with black. We want a nice big brush here, no hardness, and we want a real low opacity. We want a low opacity so that we can just start to mask off part of the shadow here, and we can just taper this off a little bit in certain areas where we don't want to have the shadow quite so prominent. And in this case, I'm just trying to create a little bit of taper, and I'll go ahead and make this brush nice and small here. I'm going to create a little bit of taper this way too, so the shadow travels just a bit there and almost touches down. Same thing over here. I just want to take a little bit of that edge off, and I'm changing my brush size by pressing the bracket key, right bracket keys a little bit bigger, left bracket keys a little bit smaller, and then I'm just painting back and forth, trying to make this shadow look a little bit more interesting. And in this case, I'm going to take a lot of this area off over here on this side because I don't think we really need much of that. I'll take the opacity up even higher here, and I just want to take off a lot of this shadow over here. Okay, great. Well, now we've customized this shadow in some pretty interesting ways. And the great thing about using a mask is that if ever we feel like we've gone too far, well, simply lower your density. Check this out. As I lower the density, I can bring some of this back, and I can get this exactly where I want it. Perhaps if I want a little bit more of a subtle taper effect, well, now I have that. Well, the next thing I want to do with my shadow is I want to add a bit of color to this. Well, in order to do that, what I want to do is just add color to the exact shape of the shadow. So check this out. Here's what we'll do. Hold down Command or Control and then click on the layer thumbnail for the shadow. Next, go ahead and click on your adjustment layer icon and then choose one of your different types of adjustments which allow you to control color. Just for an example here, let's try color balance. Now with color balance, what we can do is we can shift color here a bit, adding a bit of blue tone or blue cyan tone into the shadow. And the nice thing about this is now becoming a little bit more of a realistic shadow, because a lot of times shadows have a bit of that color in them. In this case, I'll simply lower the opacity though, because I just want a slight hint of that particular color or tone. All right, well, to finish this image off, what I want to do is add some copy to it. You can see that we have this copy folder here, or this little set. If we turn on the visibility of that icon, there are two different layers. Let's go ahead and open this up. What we can do is click in one of these layers, and then with the Move tool, we can reposition a layer. So for example, I'll go ahead and reposition this one, and then press Command or Control T. I'm going to free transform this copy, and I want to free transform it so that it travels right there along the leaf. And I'm just doing this just for the fun of it, just to add a bit more to this project. And I'll press enter or return. Next, I'll click in the creative effects layer and then reposition this so that it kind of is down there at the point of the leaf, so that we have this fun integration of typography into this photograph. So the whole point here with this small project is just to get you to begin to think creatively how you can create and then modify shadows.